Hello everyone, it's Insta Live on Fry. It is Audrey Button from Safe Harbors of the Finger Lakes. I use the pronoun she, her, hers. And today we'll be discussing LGBTQ plus and dating violence as it is Pride Month. So before we just kind of get started, I like to just kind of go over some, our basic stuff again. I always like to give a content warning because some of the material I'll be discussing may be sensitive to some, so please take care of yourself however you need to. And I always like to say this video is available after, so obviously if you're watching this later, it is available for Instagram and YouTube, so if you can't stay the whole time today, you can watch it later. And I always like to give a disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this video are not necessarily those of Safe Harbors of the Finger Lakes, but of those in the video. And then so with that, I'd like to get into our discussion today. And remember, we talked about LGBTQ plus and the risk for trafficking last week. We're talking about dating violence today, and then next week we're going to talk about how to support an LGBTQ plus friend who's in an unhealthy relationship, and then last Friday of the month we'll be talking about LGBTQ plus and sexual violence. So these are all really important topics, and I know this is not just a discussion for this month of June, but for every other day of the year. But it's just really important to bring this information to you all and have this discussion. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and get started. Like I said, I could talk about these things for a while, but I'm going to give you some really important information about LGBTQ plus community and their experience with dating violence. This kind of more focuses on adolescents, but 1 in 3 adolescents in the United States will be a victim of physical, sexual, emotional, or verbal abuse from a dating partner, and that's 1 in 3 adolescents. And less than 25% of those who experience dating violence in the LGBTQ plus community ever report the abuse. So most of the time they don't report it. And we'll talk about some reasons why they may not end up reporting or asking for help. Individuals experiencing, this dating abuse in the LGBTQ plus community, may not report because they feel embarrassed about the abuse that's happening in their relationship. They feel like their partner will try to turn the community against them if they, do something their partner disagrees with, or if they decide to end the relationship. And that's really important because, especially if they're turning the LGBTQ plus community against them, that might be their only support system that they have, because it tends to be really common for them to not have really good support systems once they come out to family and friends or people in their lives. So if they don't have a lot of support systems, that might be really difficult for them. So they might not want to end or leave the relationship or ask for help because of that. They might even be worried that their partner will out them, and outing is a tactic that is often used by partners, abusive partners in those relationships. They might threaten to out them to family and friends if they're not already out to them, or their partner just may threaten to out them as a way to gain power and control over them specifically. To say, oh, I'll tell so-and-so that, this is who you are, or, how you identify if you don't stay with me, and that's a power and control tactic. And I know I've talked about the power and control wheel before, but there are specific characteristics of the power and control wheel that are very specific to the LGBTQ plus community, which is outing. Outing is definitely one of those things. So that could prevent them from coming forward to ask for help as well. And maybe they're in their first LGBTQ plus relationship, and their partner may be isolating them from the rest of the queer community as a form of power control as well. Especially if they're new to that community, it might be a little more difficult for them to ask for help in their abusive relationship. And maybe they were made to feel ashamed about their sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression by their partner. And that might make it difficult. And they'll use all forms of abuse. Like this could be, physical, mental, emotional. They're probably gaslighting, things like that to help maintain that power and control. And isolation is definitely an unhealthy sign of a relationship. I'll actually talk about that in just a second. And then, they also just might be worried that they won't be able to get help because of their sexual orientation, gender identity, or gender expression if they reach out. And that's due to, historically people who are homophobic, transphobic, racist, especially LGBTQ people of color, they're definitely marginalized in society. So there's definitely that fear, and it's very valid, a fear that, they won't be supported or they won't get help because of their identity. So that definitely makes it extremely difficult for those in, who are LGBTQ in an abusive relationship to get help because of those things. And those are just some of many, but those are definitely some big things that do make it hard to navigate getting that help that they need. So I want to just kind of go over, I know we kind of just already talked about it, but One Love has I know we've talked about the 10 signs of a healthy relationship and the 10 signs of an unhealthy relationship, so I want to take those and give LGBTQ plus examples, okay? So we're going to start with the 10 signs of the unhealthy relationships. So we have our first one, which is manipulation, which, is when, someone tries to control your decisions, actions, or emotions. So some examples of this in a LGBTQ plus relationship may be playing into someone's internalized homophobia or discomfort around their sexuality to influence their behaviors. Another example could be trying to convince someone to stay in the closet or come out to come out before they're ready. That's really unhealthy. Pressuring someone to transition. So for example, gender expression, medical interventions, or to not transition at all. And then you have your second unhealthy sign, which is intensity. So remember, this is kind of like the 0 to 100 really quick kind of thing. It just when someone expresses those very extreme feelings and over the top behavior, it just feels extremely overwhelming. An example of this could be making someone feel obligated to date, spend more time with, or get serious with a partner because of a lack of an LGBTQ plus community. And then our third unhealthy sign is isolations. Like we talked about, you might use isolation from the LGBTQ plus community as a way to maintain power and control. Isolation is just when someone keeps you away from friends, family, or other people, especially if they know they're supportive of you and your identity. They're definitely might try to take that away from you. So examples of this, and there are many, using a lack of LGBTQ plus community or a lack of LGBTQ plus acceptance to keep someone from spending time with friends and family. An example would be your family would never accept our relationship. It would be better if you stopped talking to them, as an example. Using the fact that someone is not out to everyone to further isolate them. Someone who is not able to be out is already isolated as it is, so they may be unable to talk about the relationship at all, and let alone the fact that it's unhealthy. That could make it extremely difficult. And just preventing a person from interacting with other LGBTQ plus people or with non-LGBTQ plus people in general, especially those who are supportive of them. So our next unhealthy sign is sabotage. So, that's when someone purposely ruins your reputation, achievements, or success. So this is when someone gets outed. Outing someone to get them fired, kicked off a team, or kicked out of their home, anything to harm their reputation or their way of life or anything like that. Taking away or blocking someone's access to hormones, binders, or other gender-affirming resources for them. That's also extremely unhealthy. So our next unhealthy sign is just deflecting responsibility. This is just when someone repeatedly makes excuses for their unhealthy behavior. So some examples of this could include blaming problems on someone's LGBTQ plus identity, or using a partner's identity or one's own identity as an excuse for behaving in unhealthy ways. An example of this could be, of course I have to keep you at home. You're pansexual. If you go out, I know you'll cheat on me. And that's clearly very unhealthy. And then another example could be our family's falling apart because you've decided to be gay. It's also very extremely unhealthy. And it's gaslighting, which is extremely abusive as well. Another unhealthy sign, so guilting. So that's when someone makes you feel responsible for their actions, or makes you feel like it's your job to keep them happy. An example of this could be, making someone feel bad about their identity, their unsureness around their identity, or their dating history. So an example could be some biphobia, or how they are out to friends or family, and making you feel bad about that. Another unhealthy sign, so possessiveness. So when someone is jealous to the point where they try to control who you spend time with and what you do. Examples could include using stereotypes or past partners to say who someone can or cannot hang out with, or where they can or cannot spend time. An example could be, I don't want you spending time with her because you're into girls, you're probably into her. Another example could be, you can only hang out with straight people. That's also very, very controlling. And then you have I can never say this word, volatility, which is when someone has really strong, unpredictable reaction that makes you feel scared, confused, or intimidated. Like it's almost like walking on eggshells. So examples of this could be just erratic behavior around the lack of acceptance of the LGBTQ plus identity. An example is, I can't help yelling and throwing things sometimes. My life as a lesbian has been really hard. You see it as an excuse for their really unhealthy behavior. Another unhealthy sign is belittling, when someone does and says things to make you feel bad about yourself. So examples of this could include just using stereotypes or transphobic comments towards someone to make them feel small or worthless, making someone feel lesser because they identify outside the heteronormative or cisnormative standards, or body shaming someone, especially surrounding their gender identity. And then lastly, our last unhealthy sign is betrayal. And this is just when someone is disloyal or acts in an intentionally dishonest way. An example of this is also outing someone without their consent, and then intentionally using incorrect pronouns and or a person's dead name. So remember, a dead name is, this could be intentionally or unintentionally calling a trans or non-binary person by former name or birth name that they no longer use. And that is really harmful and not okay to do. And they do this in private or public. It's really important to ask for people's pronouns and how they identify, what they prefer to use. And if you're intentionally or even unintentionally doing it, it's important to, be, aware of that. Okay. So we talked about the 10 signs. Let's talk about unhealthy relationships and examples. Let's do 10 signs of a healthy relationship and examples, because that's really important to also recognize that there are healthy relationships out there as well, and what those could look like. Okay, so you have your first sign, comfortable peace. So the relationship moves at a speed that feels enjoyable for each person. So examples of this could include asking for consent as a couple discovers their physical relationship, which you should always ask for consent no matter what. And just a note, gender queer and fluid people may have different levels of comfort with different aspects of their physical relationship, depending on how they feel on that particularly. And it's just really always important to ask for consent at all points of contact. Okay. And just feeling that one partner is taking it slow and checking in often to make sure they're comfortable, especially when it's one partner's first LGBTQ plus relationship. And just respecting a person's timeline and their coming out process. Just being a really good support and helping them through that. Okay. So our second healthy sign is trust. So we remember, trust is confidence that your partner won't do anything or to hurt or ruin the relationship. So they're just feeling comfortable sharing one private thoughts, feelings, etc., not worrying that they're going to be exposed for who they are, especially if they aren't out yet. They're not scared that their partner will out them. Okay. And then our third one is respect. So you value one another's beliefs and opinions and love one another for who you are as a person. So examples of this could include using correct gender pronouns and name, respecting a partner's wish to remain sober by not peer pressuring them. And I point this out because alcohol and substance use and abuse tend to be a little bit higher in LGBTQ plus communities. So that's something that you should always respect, even for anybody at that point. Avoid fetishization and stereotypes of queer people of color. And then our next healthy sign is fun. You enjoy spending time together and bring out the best in each other. And examples of this could include, working together, find safe and brave places where you and your partner can enjoy each other's company without fear of judgment, and getting involved in the LGBTQ plus communities together. That can be really, really, important and empowering for both of you in that relationship. So, I think that's really important to recognize, and thank you for your comment as well. And I really like to point this out because there are things with the LGBTQ plus community that are very specific to the community. So, this is really important to discuss. So, our next healthy sign is, healthy conflict. So I know I've talked about this before. There is such thing as healthy conflict. This is just when you're openly and respectfully discussing issues and confronting disagreements non-judgmentally. You're not always going to agree on everything, but it's how you handle it together in a relationship that really is really important. So, some examples that you might see this in an LGBTQ plus relationship is, navigating life's twists and turns as a team, working together, not against each other. And no matter what conflict is going on, always respecting your loved one's identities, bodies, feelings, needs, and so much more. Just accepting each other for who we are, because especially in the LGBTQ plus community, extremely marginalized, not a lot of support systems. It's really important to stand up for each other and be there for each other. And then honesty is our next one. So you can be truthful and candid without fearing how the other person will respond. So just, examples could include, just being truthful with one another about boundaries regarding outness, public displays of affection, and so forth. Just, respecting those boundaries and communicating those. Being honest with one another about wants, needs, and relationships with other people, if the relationship is open or polyamorous, so keep that in mind. And lastly, truthfully sharing HIV and AIDS status if appropriate, okay? And that kind of goes with, feeling comfortable with them to, talk about that stuff. And then independence is our next one. So you have space to be yourself outside the relationship. So an example of this could be just feeling comfortable spending time alone with different friend groups, both in and outside the LGBTQ plus community. And then our next one's equality. So the relationship feels balanced and everyone puts the same effort and success into the relationship. An example of these, this sign could be combating stereotypes about the LGBTQ plus community and relationship dynamics. An example could be, avoid assumptions about butch and femme dynamics to ensure both people have an equal say in the relationship. That tends to be a common stereotype in relationships. And then we have a couple more. So our next one is taking responsibility. So just owning your own actions and words. An example of this could be openly apologizing if you misgender or dead name someone. Like I said before in the unhealthy characteristics, you may dead name someone intentionally or unintentionally, but it's really important to, do your best to ask their pronouns they prefer and their name that they prefer, and avoid using, using the wrong pronouns or using their dead name. Make sure you really are paying attention to that, or if you do, use the wrong pronouns or use their dead name, correct yourself, apologize, and, make sure you try your best to keep, identifying them correctly. And, our last one's kindness. You're caring and empathetic to one another and provide comfort and support. And some examples of this could be just being understanding of people's timelines for coming out, because everyone's different in their own way. Understanding when a loved one is struggling with internalized prejudice. Supporting loved ones during their transition. And some examples of these just for kindness is just, like I said, using the proper pronouns, affirming desires to use binders or packers, or to seek out gender-affirming surgeries, and reminding the person that you love and accept them in their gender identity and presentation. So, like I said, I could talk about this forever, but it's really important to recognize these differences and why people in abusive relationships in the LGBTQ plus community have a harder time getting support or leaving those relationships because of these things. So just keep those in mind. So make sure you tune in next week because this will be a good follow-up topic for today, is how to support an LGBTQ plus friend in an unhealthy relationship. And with that, I will end today's Instagram Live on Fry. And I really appreciate you all for checking it out. I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you.